Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently as we take you on a peaceful journey. This is a space for calm, for quiet moments, and for the kind of stories that settle your heart and slow your breath. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the world to soften around you. Now, let's begin with tonight's story. Today's story is titled Sielaria, the Eternal Dawn. Chapter 1, The Forgotten Book. It was a rainy afternoon when Alaric boarded the 4:27 train to Vernham Cross, a small town known more for its wildflowers than its history. The train car, dimly lit, and half empty, smelled faintly of damp coats and old paper. Alaric took a seat by the window, propped his leather satchel beside him, and let his thoughts drift like the fog clinging to the hills outside. As the train jolted forward with a mechanical sigh, his eyes caught sight of someone sitting 2 rows ahead, a woman, wrapped in a forest green cloak, her face mostly hidden behind the hood. Her presence was quiet but oddly commanding. Her posture was regal, and the object in her lap appeared to absorb her entirely, an ancient, red-bound book with gold leaf along the edges and a leather strap securing its cover. Alaric couldn't help but observe the intensity with which she read. She flipped pages slowly, carefully, as though the act were a ritual, her fingers tracing the edges like each letter whispered secrets meant only for her. Something about the book shimmered under the dim light. Maybe it was the gold embossed title, or perhaps just a trick of the shadows. But then, without warning, the woman snapped the book shut. She stood, the train slowing as it approached a rural station. The woman glanced over her shoulder, eyes meeting Alaric's for the briefest instant, deep green eyes, like forest moss after rain, before she turned and exited the train, leaving behind nothing but a hint of rose and cedar in the air. And the book. Alaric blinked. It was there on the seat, abandoned. He glanced around, half expecting someone to claim it, but no one moved. After a few hesitant moments, curiosity got the better of him. He rose, walked over, and picked up the book. It was heavier than he expected, the leather cool and slightly cracked. The gold title read, The Garden of the Lost Sun, Secrets of Sielaria. Sielaria. He had never heard of such a place. The strap came undone easily, and inside, the pages were worn but meticulously preserved. Maps. Sketches. Cursive handwriting in ink faded by time. The scent of dried flowers and pressed herbs wafted from between the pages. Alaric's heart began to pound, not out of fear, but from that strange feeling one gets when stumbling upon something old, something meant to be forgotten, but wasn't. He turned to the first page. A hand-drawn illustration of a stone courtyard blooming with vines and flowers greeted him. A silver fountain stood at the center, its waters painted with such realism he swore he could hear the trickle. Beneath the drawing was a sentence. Only those who remember may find the garden. The gate does not open to strangers of time. Alaric frowned, intrigued. He flipped a few pages further, scanning lines of text that described a hidden garden deep within the hills of a place called Thistlemere, nestled in an ancient part of southern Sielaria. It spoke of a door that only opened under certain light, of a key made not of metal but memory, and of a woman known only as the keeper. As the train chugged on, Alaric found himself losing time. He read and read, fully absorbed. When he finally looked up, the train was pulling into Vernham Cross. He shut the book gently, as though it might break, and tucked it into his satchel. One last glance outside revealed only grey skies and distant trees. The woman was long gone. But something had already begun. As he stepped off the train, a light drizzle kissed his face, and a breeze carried the faint scent of lavender from somewhere unseen. In that moment, he knew deep in his bones that this was not just a book. It was an invitation. Chapter 2, The Map Beneath the Ink. The next morning arrived draped in soft mist and a reluctant sun. Vernham Cross, with its cobbled lanes and ivy-cloaked chimneys, looked like a place lost between time and dream. Alaric had barely slept. His thoughts had been consumed by the book, now resting on the windowsill of his rented room above the town's only bakery. He ran his fingers over its cracked leather again. The book almost seemed warmer now, more alive, like it remembered being read. He flipped it open to a passage he'd marked the night before, one that spoke of a stone path veiled in bramble, leading through forgotten ruins to the heart of Thistlemere. But there was something new. The page, which had once seemed blank save for a faded border, now displayed faint ink lines, like a sketch emerging from the paper. Alaric tilted the page toward the morning light. The lines grew clearer. A map. It was hand-drawn, marked not with town names or roads, but symbols, a spiral sun, a lone tree upon a hill, a stream crossing a cracked archway. And in the bottom corner, a tiny phrase in ink so faint it was almost invisible. Follow the places memory remembers. Alaric's breath caught. Was the book changing? Reacting to him? He copied the map into his journal and packed quickly. There was no guide to Thistlemere, no listing in the local directories. But an elderly man at the cafe downstairs, upon overhearing Alaric ask about it, chuckled and said, "Old Wood past Belrow Hill. No one goes there anymore. Just trees and whispers." Whispers. Alaric didn't ask further. By noon, he had crossed the river at the town's edge and found the beginning of a trail that seemed to match the curves on the mysterious map. It wasn't paved, just a series of soft dirt impressions winding into a wooded hill. Wildflowers lined the path, lavender, yarrow, and something blue and fragrant he couldn't name. As he ventured deeper, the air grew still. Time slowed. Birdsong was replaced by a kind of hum, nature's hush, like the world itself holding its breath. At one point, he came upon a tree marked with the symbol of a spiral sun, the same as on the map. He placed his hand against the bark, and a memory surged forth, the woman's eyes on the train, deep and green, like the forest itself. The path curved suddenly and opened to a small glade. There, nestled beneath an outcrop of mossy stone, was a forgotten bench carved from oak, cracked by time but somehow intact. A bird landed silently upon it and flew off just as quickly. Alaric sat. He opened the book again. This time, the next page revealed a passage not seen before. When the path becomes quiet, and the watcher remembers, the door shall appear where none was drawn. Door. Watcher. He scanned the glade. Nothing resembled a door. But then on the far side, vines clung to what seemed at first like just rock. He walked closer. The growth parted slightly with the breeze, revealing an outline, a perfect rectangle. A door-shaped crease in the stone. There was no handle. No hinges. Just a shape. Waiting. Alaric stepped back. His heartbeat was loud in his ears. He wasn't frightened, but he was no longer sure this was mere coincidence. The book, the woman, the map that appeared from nowhere, it was all orchestrated. He could feel it. Something was calling him forward. Suddenly, his foot brushed something in the grass. He knelt. A small silver object glinted in the moss, a pendant shaped like an hourglass, its center a circle of dark green glass. It was old and warm to the touch. As he held it, the breeze shifted. The vines rustled, and the faintest tremble pulsed through the hidden door in the rock, as though it, too, had just taken a breath. Alaric didn't know what would happen next. But he knew this was no longer a journey of curiosity. It was a journey of purpose. Chapter 3, The Whispering Door. The wind had shifted. Alaric stood before the strange stone wall, the outline of the door now clear as a crack in the world. No handle. No keyhole. No markings except for the sensation that something beyond it was aware of him. The green glass pendant in his hand throbbed lightly, like a heartbeat. He held it up, and for a fleeting second, he swore the outline shimmered. Then he heard it. A whisper. So faint he almost thought it was just the wind. But the words were unmistakable, though in a language he did not recognize. They seemed ancient. Rhythmic. Like a chant. Alaric's spine tingled. He stepped back, scanning the glade. No one. Nothing. Just the trees watching like silent sentinels. The birds had gone quiet. Even the breeze seemed to still. He looked at the pendant again. On closer inspection, it wasn't solid. There was something swirling within the green glass. Like mist trapped in a globe. And etched along its silver rim were words in the same language as the whispers. Curving runes, delicate and fine. He sat down at the stone bench again, laying the pendant on the open book. That's when the impossible happened. The page turned itself. Not harshly, gently, as if guided by an unseen hand. The next page was different from the rest. The parchment felt smoother. Fresher. And on it, scrawled in deep green ink, was an instruction. To open what is hidden, you must give what is known. Alaric read it aloud, unsure of what it meant. He spoke it again slower. And as the last word escaped his lips, the pendant grew warm. He picked it up quickly. It buzzed in his hand like a bee trying to break free. And then he felt it again, the whisper. Closer this time. Inside his mind. Show us your memory. The words were not his own. Not spoken aloud. But they were real. Alaric closed his eyes. In an instant, images flooded his mind, his childhood in the grey apartment above his grandfather's clock shop. The way the man's hands always smelled of cedar and brass. The day he found a hollow wall behind a cupboard and imagined it led to another world. The moment he first dreamed of leaving the city and chasing stories instead of fixing clocks. He opened his eyes. The pendant stopped vibrating. The outline of the door began to pulse with light, dim, green, and steady, like the glow of a firefly in the dark. The stone creaked. A sliver of air hissed outward as a seam split open, just wide enough to let in a thin blade of light. Moss and earth shifted. Leaves scattered. The wall opened inward, revealing a dark corridor lined with stone slick from time and water. Alaric hesitated only briefly before stepping inside. The air was cool and still. It smelled like deep earth and lavender. A narrow path led downward, lit only by strange vines along the walls, each one glowing softly in pale blues and greens. Bioluminescent moss glowed underfoot, cushioning his steps in eerie silence. After a few minutes, the corridor opened into a circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal of white marble, smooth and untouched by age. Upon it sat a second book, smaller than the first, bound in violet leather. A silver clasp held it shut. Alaric approached slowly. The book bore no title, no markings. But his name was etched faintly into the edge of the pedestal. Alaric Elander, child of curious paths. He froze. His full name. Not something he ever wrote down. Not something he ever shared. Heart racing, he reached out. As his fingers brushed the cover, a light exploded around the chamber, not blinding, but enveloping, warm. It felt like stepping into a memory. A memory not his. Visions flashed across the chamber walls, a woman in a silver mask walking through a night garden. A tower wrapped in flowering vines rising from a sea of mist. A storm tearing through a stone gate. And finally, a garden. Vast, overgrown, lit by floating lanterns. A place of beauty, but sadness too. The images faded. And in their place, a single sentence appeared carved across the chamber wall, letter by glowing letter. She waits, beyond the gates of Sielaria, where the sun forgot to rise. Alaric's breath caught in his throat. She. The keeper. The woman from the train. It was all connected more deeply than he had ever imagined. The book. The pendant. this strange chamber that knew his name. But more pressing than the answers was the realization that he had only just crossed the threshold. Whatever Sielaria was, it wasn't just a legend. It was a place that wanted to be found. Or perhaps, needed to be. He pocketed the violet book and turned back toward the corridor. To his surprise, the path behind him was gone. In its place, a spiral staircase leading upward into glowing vines and shifting stone. He didn't panic. Somewhere inside, he had expected this. Every step upward echoed like a heartbeat. When he emerged at the top, he found himself not in the glade, but in a moonlit courtyard filled with flowers that glowed softly in the dark. A silver fountain whispered at the center. And perched on the fountain's edge, as if waiting for him, sat a single white feather. Alaric picked it up. It was still warm. Chapter 4, The Garden of Lost Sons. Alaric stood at the edge of the courtyard, breath stilling in his chest. The air here was different. Heavy with fragrance, yet light with silence. Like the world had gone still just long enough for him to hear it breathing. The moon hung low in the sky, silver and massive, casting light across the flower beads in pale glows of violet, blue, and pale ember. The white feather in his hand pulsed with residual warmth, as if it had been plucked only seconds ago from a living creature. He turned it between his fingers, wondering who, or what, had left it for him. The garden stretched beyond the courtyard in terraced layers. Stone archways leaned slightly from age, choked in ivy, each leading to another forgotten path. Flowers here did not grow as they did in the world above. They shimmered faintly, as if they remembered light differently. No two petals bore the same hue. Some plants thrummed when the breeze passed over them, like tiny, living instruments. And in the center of it all stood a tree. Not large but old. Ancient. Its bark was the color of twilight, and from its branches hung orbs of soft golden light, each one glowing steadily like a miniature sun. They hovered among the leaves as though weightless. Some floated down slowly to the ground, where they faded into the earth like memories returning home. Alaric moved toward it, drawn by something older than curiosity. A longing. The kind of yearning he didn't know he carried. As he approached, a gentle voice echoed from the garden walls. Not all light is made of fire. Some comes from what was lost. He spun, eyes searching. No one. He turned back to the tree, and at its base, a figure stood. She wore robes of pale green and starlight. Her hair was white, falling like mist down her back, though her face held no age. Her eyes were closed, and yet she seemed to see him perfectly. Alaric froze. She opened her mouth and spoke not aloud, but directly into his mind. You followed memory. You remembered enough to find the gate. I don't understand, Alaric whispered. What is this place? Her eyes opened. They were gold. Not the gold of coin or metal, but of sunlight on quiet water. This is Sielaria, or what remains of it. A garden where the forgotten bloom. She stepped aside and gestured toward the tree. Each orb is a lost sun. A memory that once lit someone's life, until it was lost. Alaric looked closer. Within the orbs, faint scenes flickered, a child chasing butterflies, an old man reading by candlelight, a woman laughing with her head tilted back, hair wild in the wind. These are memories, he murmured. Yes. The ones no longer remembered. But they still live. Here. Until they are reclaimed. Alaric turned to her. And you? You're the keeper. She nodded slowly. I am what the garden made me. I was once like you. That made him pause. You found a book. She smiled. No. The book found me. Suddenly, the garden pulsed with light. The orbs shimmered, the flowers shifted their glow, and a gust of warm wind rolled through the terrace. The keeper's expression turned grave. The garden is stirring. Something stirs beneath its roots. A memory long buried, a pain left unresolved. She motioned for him to follow. As they walked deeper through the terraces, Alaric noticed how the air thickened, not with heat, but with presence. The kind of weight you feel before a storm. Statues lined the pathway, now cracked and eroded. Each bore a different expression: joy, grief, terror, peace. The garden does not just remember beauty, the keeper said. It remembers everything. They arrived at a fountain long dried, its basin filled with petals and dust. At its center sat a single orb larger than the rest. But it was dim. Clouded. A forgotten truth, she whispered. It belongs to you. Alaric stepped closer. As he touched it, the world fell away. He was a boy again, hiding in a clock cabinet, listening to his parents argue in the next room. The pain of wishing they'd notice him. The way he escaped into books. The ache of loneliness. The guilt of running away when he turned 17. The grandfather who died without a goodbye. The memory crushed him like a wave. Not because it was new, but because it had always been there. Dormant. Unspoken. He opened his eyes. The orb was glowing. The keeper looked at him with sorrow and pride. Now you carry light again. The orb floated from the fountain, joined the tree above, and settled among the others, brighter than most. Alaric felt lighter. Not healed, but more whole. The keeper placed a hand on his shoulder. You may stay. Or you may continue. The garden welcomes both. He looked out at the terraces, the endless paths, the glowing sun orbs, the stone gates beyond. And he knew. This was only the beginning. Chapter 5, The Silver Gate Beneath the Roots. The morning after the memory orb lit up, Alaric awoke not in the garden, but in a modest stone chamber with ivy curling through the window cracks. A soft breeze wafted through, carrying with it the scent of lavender and loam. Somewhere nearby, bells rang clear and steady, marking time in a place that had long since lost track of it. The keeper was gone. So was the courtyard. But the violet book lay beside him, now bound with a thin silver thread. A note had been slipped beneath it, written in the same hand as the passages from the garden walls. Follow the river beneath the hill. There lies the town that forgot its name and the castle that remembers. Alaric tucked the note into his coat. His boots hit the soft moss floor as he stepped outside and found himself standing on a stone path carved into the hillside, overlooking a mist-laced valley. Below, in a hollow carved out by time and river, a small town clung to the earth half drowned in mist, rooftops bowed under ivy and age. The descent took hours. The path was slow and winding, hemmed in by old trees whose roots twisted like guardians over forgotten steps. As Alaric followed it down, he passed moss-covered milestones, some carved with symbols he had seen in the book, others so worn they could have been made by wind. At one point, he passed a dry stone archway nearly hidden in brush. Something inside him stirred an echo of recognition without memory. But he moved on. The town called. By dusk, he reached the edges of what could barely be called a village. Buildings of grey stone leaned like tired watchers. Windows were shuttered. Doors warped. No firelight flickered from inside. But the town wasn't abandoned. Alaric could sense it. The kind of silence that listens. That waits. He followed a narrow road toward the town square, where a dry well sat in the center like a forgotten heart. Behind it, perched high above on the far end of the ridge, was a castle not grand, but enduring. Built of black stone and narrow towers, its silhouette blended with the mountains beyond. It was exactly as the book had drawn it. Alaric crossed the square and found a lone tavern, its wooden sign hanging by one hinge. Inside, a single lantern glowed. The tavern keeper was an old man, face carved like driftwood, with eyes like stormy glass. He didn't speak much, but when Alaric mentioned the castle, the man simply poured tea and said, "No one's crossed that gate in 40 winters." "Why not?" "Because the gate forgets you the moment you walk away." Alaric blinked. "What do you mean?" The man shrugged. "You'll see. If it lets you." He stayed the night in a room that smelled of cedar and salt. Dreams came, thick and strange. A voice whispering, "You've come too soon." Or far too late. A figure with antlers watching from the edge of a ruined garden. A silver gate, breathing. The next morning, Alaric rose before the sun and climbed toward the castle. The path grew narrower, more treacherous. Grass gave way to shale, and roots clawed from the earth like fingers trying to escape. At the castle gates, he found no guards. No chains. Only a pair of tall doors made of silver-veined oak, bound in bands of tarnished iron. He placed a hand against it. Nothing. Then he remembered. To open what is hidden, you must give what is known. Alaric closed his eyes. This time, he didn't summon a memory. He offered a question. What was I meant to forget? The wind answered. Not in words. In movement. The gate creaked open. Not fully, just enough for him to slip through. Inside, the castle was silent, layered in dust, and yet, untouched. Like it had been waiting. He wandered through echoing halls lined with faded tapestries, stars, gardens, and a strange symbol repeated over and over, a spiral within a sun. Then he came to a spiral staircase descending into the earth. At its base, hidden beneath the roots of the mountain, was a chamber lit by flickering lanterns. And there in the center stood another door. This one was silver. Not carved. Grown. Twisted from threads of metal and root, pulsing faintly with breath. It looked alive. Alaric approached. A voice echoed, not aloud, not in his head, but in his chest. Beyond lies the truth of why you were called. He reached out. And the door pulsed once. Twice. Then opened. Chapter 6, The Memory Below the Mountain. The door opened silently, as though it had been waiting for Alaric's touch all this time. The silver threads, like veins of light running through the roots of the earth, pulsed once and then parted, revealing a dark, winding corridor. The air was thick and cool, carrying a scent of moss, iron, and something ancient like the earth itself was holding its breath. Alaric stepped through the threshold, the floor beneath him smooth and polished, though clearly weathered by time. The light from the lanterns above flickered dimly, casting long shadows against the stone walls. The deeper he went, the more the silence pressed in, until it was all-consuming, a quiet so deep it seemed to vibrate in his bones. At the end of the corridor stood a large archway, its frame carved with intricate rune symbols Alaric recognized from the book. He stepped closer, feeling a strange hum in the air, like the very fabric of the place was alive, waiting. As his hand brushed the stone, the runes flared to life with a soft golden glow. The archway pulsed, and with a grinding sound, it slowly opened. Beyond it was a vast chamber darker than the passage, but for the faint glow of the moss that clung to the stone. The walls were lined with shelves, most of them empty, save for a few ancient scrolls and cracked pottery. In the center of the room stood a single pedestal, and on it rested a large, ancient book. Alaric's heart skipped a beat. He approached the pedestal cautiously, drawn to the book as if it held the answers he had been searching for. The cover was dark, made of some sort of weathered leather, etched with designs that seemed to shift when he looked away. He reached for it, his fingers trembling slightly as they brushed the cover. The moment his hand made contact, the room seemed to come alive. A low, mournful sound echoed through the chamber like the groan of the earth itself waking after a long slumber. The walls trembled slightly, and the lanterns flickered violently before steadying once more. The book opened, the pages flipping of their own accord, settling on a page that glowed with an eerie blue light. The Lost Children of Sielaria was written at the top of the page. Beneath it, a single passage appeared, written in a flowing script. To remember is to return. To forget is to be lost. Alaric read the words aloud, the silence in the chamber amplifying the sound of his voice. As the words left his lips, a wave of recognition hit him, a memory, faint and distant, like a forgotten dream. The feeling was overwhelming, but he couldn't grasp it. He couldn't pull it fully into focus. The book seemed to pulse in his hands, as if it, too, was remembering something. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the chamber. Alaric turned, startled. The figure was cloaked in shadows, their face hidden beneath a hood. They moved slowly, deliberately, and with each step, the air seemed to grow colder. The figure's presence filled the room, and for a moment, Alaric wasn't sure whether they were real or part of a vision. "You've come far," the figure said, their voice soft, but unmistakable. It was the same voice he had heard before, whispering in his mind. "You followed the path," answered the call. "But not all answers are meant to be understood." Alaric's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "Who are you?" The figure lowered their hood, revealing a face that was both familiar and strange. Their eyes were golden, glowing faintly, and their features were delicate, almost ethereal. They smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "I am what you will become," they replied cryptically. "I am the keeper of what is forgotten. The one who holds the memories of those who have been lost to time." Alaric's breath caught in his throat. "Lost?" The keeper nodded. "Sielaria was not always what you see now. Once, it was a land of great power, a place where time itself could be bent. But it was destroyed, its people forgotten, its memories scattered. Those who remain, like you, are all that is left." Alaric took a step forward, his mind racing. "But, what does this have to do with me? Why am I here?" The keeper's gaze softened. "You are part of the memory. You were born to remember Sielaria, to awaken it from the depths of time. But there is something more you must understand." The keeper's voice lowered to a whisper. "The garden you walked through, the book you found, they are not just guides. They are the remnants of something far older than you can comprehend. And they have chosen you." Alaric's head spun. "Chosen? I didn't ask for this." The keeper stepped closer, their presence overwhelming. "No. But destiny does not wait for those who seek it. It is you who must decide what to do with the memories you carry. You will either save Sielaria from its eternal slumber, or watch it fade into nothingness." Alaric's heart pounded. The weight of the keeper's words sank in, and for the first time, he understood the gravity of his journey. This wasn't just about uncovering ancient secrets. It was about saving a world that had been forgotten, a place that lived only in memories. The keeper extended their hand, a pale, slender finger pointing to the book. "Open it," they said, "and you will understand what has been hidden beneath the roots." Alaric hesitated for only a moment before he turned back to the book. The pages were still glowing, the light intensifying as if in response to his touch. He reached out, placing his hands firmly on the book's edges. The pages turned, and Alaric felt a strange sensation, as though something was being drawn from him. The room around him blurred, and the ground seemed to shift. The world tilted, and for a moment, he was no longer sure of where he was. And then, everything went dark. Chapter 7, The Return of the Forgotten Son. Alaric's eyes snapped open, the darkness of the chamber slowly dissolving into faint light. It wasn't the soft glow of the lanterns he'd grown accustomed to. This light was different, stronger, warmer. It pulsed from within him, from the very book he'd touched moments before. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, as though the weight of the world had settled on his chest. His surroundings shifted. He was no longer in the chamber, or anywhere near the castle. Instead, he stood in a vast expanse of field of soft, golden grass that stretched endlessly beneath a sky filled with swirling colors, like a painting made alive. The horizon was aglow, but there were no stars, no moon, only a single, brilliant sun hovering just above the earth. It was unlike anything Alaric had ever seen, a sun that didn't shine, but pulsed with energy. In the distance, the faint outline of a great city appeared, a place of gleaming towers and vast walls, its design both familiar and foreign. A place he somehow recognized. Sielaria. Alaric whispered. He didn't know how he knew it, but the name felt ancient, as though it had been spoken in his ear 1,000 times. The land, the sun, the city, everything was familiar, but he couldn't place it. He stepped forward, his feet moving on their own, guided by an invisible force. As he walked, the grass beneath him shimmered. Tiny lights rose from the ground, like fireflies, and hovered just out of reach. He tried to catch one, but it vanished before he could. The field stretched on, and the sun's pulse grew louder, as if it were beating in time with his heart. And then, before him, the city loomed. The gates of the city were enormous, made of stone and vine, twisting upward toward the sky. The walls were ancient, worn by time, but they still held a certain grandeur, a faint echo of their former might. Alaric approached the gates, and as his hand touched the stone, the world around him seemed to shift again. The gates creaked open, not from any physical force, but as though the city itself recognized his presence. Beyond the gates, the city was not empty, but filled with people. Or at least, figures that looked human, though they were eerily still, their eyes glowing faintly with that same golden light. They stood in perfect rows, silent and unblinking, as though they were waiting. Alaric walked deeper into the city, his heart pounding. The streets were paved with smooth stones, lined with flowers that glowed softly, their petals shifting like the colors of the sun. The buildings, though crumbled in places, were still towering and magnificent. He could hear the faint echoes of a forgotten song, the hum of ancient voices calling to him. He passed an open archway, through which he saw a garden, one that resembled the garden in the book. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches reaching toward the sun. The grass was alive with strange, glowing creatures, their wings flitting through the air in delicate patterns. Alaric stopped in the center of the square. His breath caught in his throat as he saw something in the distance, a figure standing beneath a tree, silhouetted against the light. It was her. The woman he had seen before, the one with the golden eyes. The keeper. She stood there, motionless, her white hair glowing like silver in the strange sunlight. Alaric took a step forward, and the world seemed to pause. The golden figures surrounding him didn't move, but he felt their presence, their eyes following his every step. Alaric. The keeper's voice came, soft but clear, filling the air around him. You have come far, but the truth is not as simple as it seems. He stopped before her, his voice barely a whisper. What is this place? What is Sielaria? The keeper's eyes glowed brighter, and for the first time, a smile touched her lips. It was a sad smile, a smile full of understanding. Sielaria is a place that was lost. A kingdom of power, of light, of memory. But it was forgotten. It was buried beneath time and silence. She stepped closer, and Alaric felt an overwhelming presence surround him, as if the city itself was watching. You were chosen to remember. To bring it back. Alaric frowned, confusion washing over him. But I don't understand. Why me? Why have I been called? The keeper's gaze softened. You carry the memories of this place. You are not merely a visitor here. You were born of it, and through the book, through the path you've followed, you have awakened what was once dormant. She gestured to the golden figures around them. They are the children of Sielaria, the ones who lived here, the ones who shaped this land. But when Sielaria fell, they were trapped in time. Their memories, their lives, frozen in place. They are waiting for you to remember them, to restore what was lost. Alaric's heart pounded. But how do I restore them? How do I bring this place back? The keeper's eyes flickered. You must choose. You must remember the lost son, the true source of the city's power. You must open the silver gate beneath the roots and bring back what was lost to the world. Alaric stood in stunned silence. The weight of her words settled around him. He wasn't just here to uncover history. He was here to make a choice, to decide whether to restore this forgotten kingdom, or let it remain lost forever. And then, as if in answer, the ground beneath him trembled. The golden figures began to stir, their eyes glowing brighter, their bodies shifting as if waking from a deep slumber. The keeper stepped back, her form fading into the light. The gate is open, Alaric. The sun is ready to return. But the price of remembering is steep. You must be prepared to pay it. Alaric's breath quickened. The path ahead was clear, but the weight of his decision bore down on him. Would he choose to restore this lost world, risking everything in the process? Or would he walk away, leaving the past to fade into the ether? As the city whispered its secrets to him, Alaric made his choice. He stepped forward, toward the Silver Gate. Chapter 8, The Silver Sun. Alaric stepped forward, his heart pounding with every beat. The Silver Gate loomed before him, glowing with an ethereal light, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It pulsed, as if alive, waiting for him to make his choice. The air around him was thick with the weight of the moment. The keeper's words echoed in his mind: the gate is open. The sun is ready to return. But the price of remembering is steep. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the smooth, silver surface. The moment he touched it, the gate seemed to inhale, pulling him into its embrace. He staggered, disoriented, but the pull was too strong to resist. The world around him blurred, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to shift. The golden figures of the children of Sielaria, still standing in their silent rows, began to fade from view. In their place, visions appeared, flashes of a world long gone. A city in its prime, vibrant and full of life. The streets were alive with music, laughter, and the hum of magic in the air. The sun shone brightly overhead, casting a golden light on everything it touched. People walked freely, their faces filled with joy, their eyes full of hope. But then, the vision shifted. The city darkened. The sun began to dim. The once vibrant streets were now empty, the buildings crumbling. The laughter was replaced by silence, broken only by the distant sound of thunder. A storm brewed in the distance, and with it came a great shadow, dark, oppressive, and consuming. The ground shook, and the earth seemed to swallow everything in its path. The once proud city of Sielaria was no more. The sun was gone, leaving nothing but darkness in its wake. Alaric's breath caught in his throat. The memories were flooding back, memories that weren't his, but felt like they belonged to him all the same. He was seeing the fall of Sielaria, witnessing the destruction of a world that had once thrived. The keeper's voice echoed again, distant but clear: to restore Sielaria, you must return the sun. But the sun is not what it seems. It is not light, but memory. It is not a gift, but a burden. You must choose to carry it, Alaric. If you do, you will bring Sielaria back, but you will also bear its weight forever. Alaric's mind reeled. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, threatening to crush him under its intensity. To restore the sun, to bring Sielaria back, he had to embrace its memory, its pain, its loss. But what would that cost him? He turned toward the Silver Gate, the only path forward. He placed his hand against the cold surface again, and this time, it didn't pulse. Instead, it shimmered with a blinding light, and Alaric felt the heat of the sun on his skin real, burning, like he was standing directly beneath it. The light intensified, surrounding him, engulfing him. He closed his eyes, and in the instant before the light overtook him completely, he made his choice. I will remember. The world around him shattered. When Alaric opened his eyes again, he found himself standing in the center of the ruined city Sielaria's once great heart. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie, golden light that flickered like a dying ember. The streets were still empty, the buildings crumbled, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. But something had changed. The silver gate stood before him, its form solid and unyielding, its surface gleaming in the light. It no longer pulsed with the same ethereal energy, but instead radiated a quiet strength, as though it had been waiting for him all along. Alaric stepped forward, drawn toward it, and as he did, the golden figures of the children of Sielaria began to move. Slowly at first, but then faster, as if waking from a long slumber. Their eyes glowed brighter, their bodies shifting, and they began to walk toward the gate. Alaric watched in awe as they gathered around the gate, their faces filled with anticipation. They had been waiting for him for this moment. For the sun to return. He reached out and placed his hand against the gate once more. This time, it opened willingly, the silver threads unraveling to reveal a vast chamber beyond. The chamber was filled with light bright, pure, and blinding. At its center stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal rested a single orb. The orb glowed with the same golden light that had once filled the city, but now it was dim, fading. As Alaric approached, he felt a surge of energy, a pulse of warmth, and the world around him seemed to come alive once more. The figures gathered around the orb, their faces filled with reverence. Alaric stepped forward, his hand outstretched, and as his fingers brushed against the orb, it flared to life. A wave of light surged through the chamber, filling every corner with warmth and energy. The city around him began to heal, the cracks in the streets closed, the buildings stood tall again, and the sun began to rise once more, brighter and more powerful than ever before. But Alaric felt the weight of the memory, the burden of the sun settle upon him. He felt the lives of those lost, the memories of a city that had been forgotten, all pressing down on him. He could hear their voices, faint but clear, whispering through the air. We remember you, Alaric. You are the son that was lost. You are the one who brings us back. The light intensified, and Alaric closed his eyes, letting the memory wash over him. He felt it all, the joy, the sorrow, the love, and the loss. The sun was returning, but it was not just the light that had been lost, it was the memories of those who had lived and died in Sielaria, the hopes and dreams of a people long gone. And as the city of Sielaria was reborn, Alaric knew that he had become a part of it. He was not just a visitor. He was the memory. He was the son that had returned. Chapter 9, The Price of Remembering. The sun rose slowly, casting its golden light over the now healed city of Sielaria. Alaric stood in the center of the square, surrounded by the figures who had once been lost, now awakened by the light he had returned. They moved like shadows, as though they were not entirely part of this world, but rather something in between. They spoke in whispers, their voices soft and distant. He could hear them, but their words seemed to float through his mind like fragments of a forgotten dream. Their golden eyes watched him, but they were not fully present, not fully awake. They were the memories of a time long past, now reawakened by his choice. Alaric felt a strange weight settle upon him. The city, once full of life and light, now felt heavy, as though it were a living thing, its memories pressing down on him, its hopes and dreams intertwining with his own. The light of the sun was bright, but it was not the same as before. It was a light that burned, that consumed, that reminded him of what he had given up. The price of remembering is steep, the keeper's voice echoed in his mind. You have brought Sielaria back, but you have also brought its burden with you. You carry its memories, its losses, its joys, its sorrows. You are no longer just a visitor. You are a part of it. The weight of her words hit him like a tidal wave. His breath caught in his throat, and for the first time since he had entered this world, he felt truly alone. The figures around him, though they were the people of Sielaria, were distant, unreachable. Their presence was felt, but not understood. He turned toward the castle, its towering walls now fully restored, the gates wide open. There was a feeling in the air, a tension, like the city was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He knew what it was, he had felt it from the moment he had touched the silver gate. The city was alive, but it was not fully alive. It was trapped in the past, in a cycle that it could not break free from. And he, Alaric, was the key to its salvation or its doom. He walked toward the castle, his footsteps heavy. With each step, the weight of the memories grew, pressing down on him like a storm cloud. He could hear the whispers growing louder now, their voices calling out to him, asking him to remember, asking him to carry their pain. When he reached the gates, they opened before him, as though the castle itself recognized him. The halls inside were silent, the air thick with the scent of age and decay. The once grand tapestries that lined the walls had faded, their colors muted by time. The floors were cracked, the stone worn by centuries of neglect. But as he walked deeper into the castle, the light grew brighter, the golden glow of the sun reflecting off the walls, warming the air. It was as though the city itself was coming alive, breathing with him, living through him. At the heart of the castle stood a throne, its high back carved with intricate patterns. But it was not just any throne. It was the throne of Sielaria's rulers, the seat of power. And as Alaric approached, he felt the weight of the history that had once been seated here, the rulers who had led the city, the people who had shaped this world, all of them now lost to time. He reached the throne and paused. The golden figures had followed him, standing in silent rows along the walls. They watched him with their glowing eyes, their forms shimmering in the light. They were waiting for something, waiting for him to make the next move. Alaric placed his hand on the armrest of the throne, and the moment he did, the city seemed to shudder. The ground beneath him rumbled, and the light flickered. You have chosen to remember, a voice said from the shadows. But the cost of memory is not just the past. It is the future as well. Alaric turned quickly, his heart racing. From the shadows, the keeper stepped forward, her golden eyes glowing brightly in the dim light of the throne room. The city is alive, she continued. But it is not the city it once was. It is now a shadow, a reflection of what was lost. And you, Alaric, have awakened it? But you have also awakened its curse. The memories are alive within you, but they are also burdened by what was lost. You will carry them forever, and with them, the weight of Sielaria's fall. Alaric felt a pang of guilt twist in his chest. The sun, the light he had brought them back, but he had not realized the cost. He had thought he could restore Sielaria, but now he saw the truth, the city could not be saved without a price. The memories, the people, the sun, it was all intertwined, bound by the choices he had made. What do I do now? Alaric asked, his voice hoarse. The keeper's expression softened, though her eyes still glowed with the sorrow that seemed to reach through the ages. You must choose, Alaric. You must decide whether to embrace the weight of these memories, to carry them with you as the sun does, or to leave them behind, to let Sielaria fade once more into nothingness. The price of remembering is steep, but the price of forgetting is even steeper. Alaric stood there, caught between two worlds. On one hand, he could choose to forget, let the memories fade, let the city return to the nothingness it had once been. But on the other hand, if he chose to carry the memories, if he chose to bear the weight of Sielaria's past, he would be bound to it forever. The city's light would be his burden. His heart ached, torn between the two choices. You are the sun now, the keeper said softly. And the sun does not forget. It carries the weight of the world upon its shoulders, but it continues to shine. Alaric closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the memories settle upon him once more. He knew what he had to do. The decision was clear, even though the cost would be great. I will carry it, he whispered, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. I will carry Sielaria's memory. And with that, the light around him intensified, and the city of Sielaria, once again, began to breathe. Chapter 10, The Weight of the Sun. The air was heavy with the weight of Alaric's choice, a weight that pressed down on him like the sun itself, now forever his to carry. The light around him flickered, as though the very city of Sielaria was testing his resolve. The streets, once empty and forgotten, were now alive, thrumming with energy. The golden figures who had followed him, the children of Sielaria, now moved like shadows at the edge of his vision. They watched him, their eyes glowing faintly in the light of the sun he had returned. But with the return of the city came a strange, gnawing emptiness. The world felt as though it had been filled with the echoes of the past. The city, though alive again, was not whole. The people, the memories, they were shadows, mere reflections of what they once were. Alaric had restored the light, but in doing so, he had awakened something deeper, something that had been buried with Sielaria's fall. He stood in the heart of the city, the throne room where the memories of Sielaria's rulers had once filled the air. Now, it was silent, save for the soft hum of the light that seemed to pulse from within him, from within the city itself. The keeper had told him the truth: to remember was to bear the burden. To restore Sielaria was to carry its memories, its losses, its joys, and its sorrows. He had chosen to carry the weight of the sun. But now, standing in the heart of the city, Alaric could feel the truth of it. The weight was unbearable. The golden figures approached him, their silent steps echoing in the vast, empty hall. Their eyes glowed brighter now, and as they neared, Alaric could feel their presence like 1,000 whispers in his mind, each one a fragment of a life that had once been. They were not fully here, they were the remnants of the past, the shadows of those who had lived and died in Sielaria. And they were waiting. Alaric, a voice whispered, distant but clear. It was the voice of the keeper, her words echoing through the chambers of his mind. The weight of the sun is not easily borne. The memories of Sielaria are alive within you, but they are also a part of you. They will not leave you, not now, not ever. Alaric closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her words settle within him. The memories surged through him, overwhelming him like a flood. He could hear the laughter of children, the cries of soldiers, the whispers of lovers. He could feel their pain, their joy, their hopes, and their fears. It was all there, inside him, a living, breathing part of who he was now. He opened his eyes, and the world around him seemed to shimmer. The figures, the golden figures, were now gathered in a circle around him. Their eyes, still glowing with that same faint light, watched him, waiting for him to acknowledge them. "Will you lead us, Alaric?" One of the figures asked, their voice like a soft breeze. It was the voice of a woman, filled with hope and longing. "Will you guide us to the light? Will you bring us back to the world we lost?" Alaric felt his heart ache. They were waiting for him to be the one to restore Sielaria fully. But he wasn't sure he could carry the weight of their hopes. He wasn't sure he could carry the weight of his own soul, let alone theirs. "I don't know how," he whispered, his voice hoarse. The keeper's voice filled his mind again, this time softer, like a lullaby. "You must remember, Alaric. The sun does not forget. It carries the weight of the world, and so must you. The memories are not a burden, but a gift. You must learn to live with them, to use them to rebuild what has been lost. Only then can Sielaria truly rise." Alaric's heart pounded in his chest as the city around him seemed to pulse with life. The light was growing brighter now, filling every corner of the ruined city, pushing back the darkness. But it wasn't just the city that was being reborn, it was him too. He could feel the memories of Sielaria filling every part of him, shaping him, molding him into something new. The city, the people, the light, they were all inside him now. And the weight of it was both beautiful and painful. He was the sun now, and the sun did not shine without cost. But perhaps that was the price of remembering. Perhaps the price of restoring the world was to carry its pain, its beauty, and its sorrow in your heart forever. He looked out over the city, his gaze falling on the streets that were now alive with the golden light. The people of Sielaria were waking, their eyes filled with the same golden glow, their movements slow and tentative. They were like children, unsure of the world they had been brought back to. And Alaric knew that it was his responsibility to guide them, to help them remember who they were, to help them rebuild the world that had been lost. But it was also his responsibility to carry the weight of their memories. To carry the sun. He walked toward the city square, where the golden figures had gathered. They stood in a circle, their hands extended toward him, waiting for him to lead them. And as he approached, he felt the weight of the sun settle upon his shoulders, a burden that would never leave him. But he was ready. He had chosen this path. He had chosen to carry the light, and with it, the memories of Sielaria. "Let us begin," Alaric said, his voice steady. And the city of Sielaria, once lost to time, began to live again. Chapter 11, The Eternal Cycle. Sielaria had been reborn, its golden light shining through the streets once more. The people's shadows of the past, now given life, began to stir and walk among the ruins, their steps slow, unsure, like children discovering a world they had forgotten. Alaric had given them back their memories, but he knew this was only the beginning. The light he had restored was not the same light that once thrived here. It was the light of remembrance, of loss, and of the weight that came with carrying it. Alaric walked through the streets, the soft hum of the city's rebirth filling the air. He could feel the weight of every gaze, every whisper of the people who looked to him as their leader. The city was waking, but it was still fragile, still broken, and he wasn't sure he had the strength to hold it all together. He stopped at the edge of the square, where the great fountain once stood. The water had dried long ago, leaving only the cracked stone basin, now filled with vines and moss. The orb of light that had once crowned the fountain was gone, leaving an empty space where it had been. And yet, the city lived. It breathed. Alaric knew the memories of the past were still with him, pressing on him from every side. The weight of Sielaria's history, its glory, and its fall, was something he carried with every breath. He had chosen this path, but now he understood that choosing to remember came with its own price. The cycle of the past would never truly end. It would repeat, over and over again, and it was up to him to break it or let it consume him. The sound of footsteps behind him broke his thoughts. He turned to see the keeper approaching, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the growing light. "You've done it, Alaric," she said, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable weight. "You have restored the sun. You have brought Sielaria back from the brink of nothingness." Alaric nodded, but there was no joy in his expression. The city was alive, yes, but he could feel the cracks beneath the surface. He could feel the tension in the air, the pull of the memories that still lingered. "I've restored it, but I'm not sure it's enough," he said quietly. "The people are awake, but they're not whole. They're shadows of what they once were. And I'm not sure how long I can carry this weight." The keeper studied him for a long moment, her golden eyes searching his face. Then she spoke, her voice more solemn than before. "Remember this, Alaric. Sielaria was never meant to be perfect. It was a city of light, yes, but it was also a city of shadows. Its greatness was born of both the light that shone brightly, and the darkness that it cast. To restore Sielaria is to restore both the memories of its past, the pain of its fall, and the hope of its future. But the cycle will never end unless you choose to break it." Alaric frowned, his thoughts swirling. The keeper's words cut through him like a blade, but he knew they were true. The city, the sun, the memories, they were all part of an eternal cycle. If he didn't break it, if he didn't change something, it would continue forever, a never-ending loop of rebirth and decay. He turned his gaze back to the city, the streets now bathed in golden light. The people moved about, their faces filled with uncertainty, yet also hope. The cycle had begun again, and it was up to him to determine how it would unfold. "You've given me the power to remember," he said softly. "But now I need the strength to change." The keeper nodded, her expression softening. "That is the greatest challenge, Alaric. To change what has been. But it is possible. If you can look beyond the past, if you can see the future not as a reflection of what was, but as something new, then you can break the cycle. You can free Sielaria from its eternal loop." Alaric felt a weight lift from his chest. It was a burden, yes, but it was also a gift. The power to change, to shape the future, to break free of the past, that was what he had been given. But the path ahead was not clear. The city was alive, but fragile, and he knew that he couldn't do this alone. He needed the people of Sielaria to remember not just their past, but their future. He needed them to work with him, to shape the city into something new. And so, Alaric made his decision. He would not let Sielaria fall again. He would not let it be consumed by its past. He would guide the people of Sielaria into a new age, one where the light of the sun would shine brighter than ever before. But he would not do it alone. The people, the city, the memories, they all had a part to play in the future. And it was up to him to lead them. As he walked through the streets, he felt the weight of the memories still pressing down on him, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a responsibility. A duty to the city, to the people, and to the sun. The sun would shine again. But it would be a new sun, one that burned with the light of hope, not the weight of the past. Chapter 12, The New Dawn. Alaric stood at the edge of the great square, overlooking the city that was now alive with energy. The streets, once cracked and empty, were now filled with movement, people walking, talking, rebuilding. The city was waking, but it was fragile. Like a newborn, it needed time to grow strong again. The golden light that had flooded the city after its restoration now bathed everything in a soft glow. The sun, though bright and warm, did not burn. It was a gentle, reassuring presence, unlike the intense heat it once carried. But this was a new sun. It was not the same sun that had once risen over Sielaria. It was a sun born of memory, of the weight of the past, but with the promise of something new. Alaric felt the weight of his responsibility more than ever. The people were no longer mere shadows of the past, but they were still lost. They had their memories, yes, but they didn't know what to do with them. They didn't know how to move forward. The keeper's words echoed in his mind: to remember is to bring life back, but to truly live is to forget what binds you. Alaric knew that Sielaria could not move forward if it remained trapped in its own history. The city needed to grow, to become something more than the sum of its past. But how could he lead them into a future without letting the past control them? He turned, seeing the golden figures, the ones who had followed him through this journey, now scattered throughout the city. Some were working to rebuild, while others seemed lost in thought, contemplating their place in a world that was no longer the one they had known. Alaric approached one of the figures, a woman whose face seemed familiar, though he could not place her. She was standing by a fountain, her hands resting on the stone edge as she gazed into the water, her golden eyes distant and thoughtful. "Do you remember?" Alaric asked softly, standing beside her. The woman turned, her eyes locking with his. There was sadness in them, but also something else, something deeper, something that spoke of understanding. "I remember everything," she said, her voice low and steady. "But remembering is not enough." Alaric frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked back at the fountain, her expression solemn. Sielaria was once a place of great power. A place where memories were more than just fleeting thoughts, they were a part of the land itself. But now, those memories are like ghosts, haunting us, reminding us of what we lost. We cannot live in the past, Alaric. We cannot let it define us. Alaric nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had brought Sielaria back, but he had also brought its ghosts. The memories of its people, its rulers, its past, it was all still here, hovering just beneath the surface. And he knew that in order to move forward, they would have to let go of the past, or at least, let it change. But how? Alaric asked. How do we move forward if we don't remember? How do we build something new when we are haunted by what was? The woman turned to face him fully, her golden eyes full of resolve. We remember, yes. But we do not let those memories control us. We honor them, but we do not let them bind us. We build something new, something that is not defined by what was lost, but by what we can create together. Alaric felt a spark of hope flicker in his chest. Perhaps the key to Sielaria's future wasn't in the past at all. Perhaps it was in the present, what they could build now, together. He had restored the sun, yes, but the sun could not shine forever without something to nourish it. It needed the people. It needed hope. It needed a new vision. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the city's future pressing on him. He had made the choice to restore Sielaria, but now, he had to make the choice to lead it. To guide it into a new age, where the past was not forgotten, but transformed. Then let's build it, he said, his voice firm and steady. Together. The woman smiled, a soft, knowing smile. Yes. Together. As Alaric walked through the city, he could feel the change beginning. The people were still uncertain, still unsure of their place in this new world, but they were beginning to see that they were not bound by the past. They were free to shape their future, just as he was. Sielaria was no longer just a city of memories, it was a city of hope, a city of new beginnings. But the road ahead would not be easy. The shadows of the past were not so easily cast aside. They would always be a part of Sielaria, a part of the people, a part of the sun. But now, they were no longer the driving force. The future was theirs to shape. And Alaric, standing at the heart of the city, felt for the first time the full weight of the sun on his shoulders. It was not a burden, but a responsibility. A responsibility to guide the people of Sielaria, to lead them into the dawn of a new age. The dawn of Sielaria's new future had come. And Alaric would be there to see it rise. Chapter 13, The Shifting Shadows. The first few weeks after the restoration of Sielaria were filled with progress. The city, once a shell of its former self, was coming back to life. Streets were cleared, homes were rebuilt, and the golden figures, those who had once been memories, were becoming citizens once more. The people worked together, rebuilding their homes, their lives, and their future. The sun shone brightly over them, and Alaric watched, feeling a sense of accomplishment that he hadn't known in years. But even in the light of the new dawn, the shadows of the past clung to the city like smoke. They were in the corners of every street, in the silence of the empty spaces, in the eyes of those who had been reborn but still carried the weight of their lost lives. The memories of Sielaria were not easily laid to rest. They hovered over everything, a constant reminder of what had been and of what had been lost. Alaric knew that the city's rebirth was not as simple as rebuilding its structures. It was a rebuilding of the soul. But how could you rebuild a soul when it was filled with so much sorrow, so much grief? The memories of the past were alive, living within each of the city's inhabitants, and it was clear that many of them did not know how to live with that weight. As he walked through the square one afternoon, Alaric saw something that stopped him in his tracks. In the middle of the square, there was a group of figures standing in a circle. They were the golden figures, the ones who had once been trapped in time. But now, they were not standing silently. They were speaking in hushed voices, their eyes glowing faintly. As Alaric approached, he felt an unease settle in his chest. The figures turned to face him as he drew closer. Their expressions were unreadable, their golden eyes now tinged with something darker, something that Alaric had not seen before. "Alaric," one of them said, its voice low and filled with an eerie calm. It was the woman he had spoken to before, the one who had been by the fountain. "We remember. We remember everything." Alaric frowned, uneasy. "What do you mean? You remember everything?" The woman nodded slowly. We remember the city. We remember the light. We remember the fall. Her eyes darkened. But we also remember the darkness that followed. The shadows that crept in after the light faded. They have not gone. They are still here, waiting. Alaric's heart raced. He knew that the shadows of the past were not gone, but he had hoped they would not return. He had hoped that the light of Sielaria's restoration would drive them away for good. But he could feel it now, the presence of something lurking beneath the surface, something that had been awakened with the city's rebirth. What do you mean? Alaric asked, his voice tense. What shadows? The woman's expression was somber, her voice barely a whisper. The shadows are not just memories. They are the remnants of the city's destruction, the pain of its fall. They have been buried for so long, but now that the sun has returned, they are rising once more. They are part of the city's soul, Alaric. And they will not rest until they are whole again. Alaric took a step back, his mind racing. The shadows of the past, the destruction of Sielaria, were not something he could leave behind. They were not just a part of history, they were alive, and they were waiting to be remembered. Then what do we do? Alaric asked. How do we fight what we can't even see? The woman's eyes glowed brighter now, as if the weight of her knowledge was becoming too much to bear. You must remember, Alaric. You must remember the truth of Sielaria, the truth of its fall. Only by facing it can you truly break the cycle. Alaric shook his head. But I've already faced it. I brought the light back. I gave the city its memories. I can't keep living in the past. You don't have a choice, the woman replied, her voice filled with a sorrowful finality. The past will always be with you, Alaric. It will always shape the future, no matter how hard you try to change it. A chill ran down Alaric's spine as he realized the truth of her words. He had thought that restoring Sielaria was enough, that by bringing back the sun, by restoring the memories, the city would be free. But he now understood that the shadows would always be a part of Sielaria. They were woven into its very fabric, and as long as they existed, they would always be a part of the future. Alaric turned away, his thoughts a whirlwind. He could feel the weight of the decision before him. He had chosen to restore the city, to bring back the light. But in doing so, he had awakened something darker, something that had been buried beneath the surface for far too long. He had to face the shadows. He had to confront the truth of Sielaria's fall, and he had to do it before they consumed everything he had worked so hard to rebuild. The golden figures watched him as he walked away, their eyes filled with understanding. They knew what he had to do. They knew the price of remembering. Alaric knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The shadows were not easily defeated, and the past was not so easily left behind. But he had made his choice. He would face the darkness head on, no matter what it cost him. As he walked through the city, the golden light of the sun shining down on him, Alaric knew one thing for certain: the shadows of Sielaria would not defeat him. He had chosen to remember, and now, he would choose to face what came next. Chapter 14, The Echoes of Sielaria. The city of Sielaria was not what it seemed. It had been reborn, yes, but beneath the golden light of the sun, the shadows of the past still lingered, like a fog that wouldn't lift. Alaric could feel it in the air, an uneasy tension that pulled at him, whispering in his ears, calling him to face what he had awakened. He had chosen to remember, to restore Sielaria to its former glory. But now, with the city alive again, the weight of its history pressed down on him. The shadows were not mere memories, they were echoes, the lingering remnants of a lost world. And they were beginning to stir. Alaric wandered the streets, the faces of the people blurred by the weight of his thoughts. They were moving forward, yes, but there was a sense of unease in the air, as though they knew that something was coming, something they could not escape. It was the night when it happened. The sun had just set, casting the city in a soft, golden hue. The streets were quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by a strange stillness. Alaric stood at the edge of the square, gazing out over the city, when he felt it, a shift in the air, a subtle change that sent a shiver down his spine. The golden figures, those who had once been trapped in time, were gathered in the square, standing in a circle. Their golden eyes glowed faintly, but their faces were empty, hollow. They moved like shadows, their forms flickering in and out of existence, as though they were not fully here. They seemed to be waiting for something, and Alaric knew, with a growing sense of dread, that they were waiting for him. He stepped forward, his heart pounding. The moment his foot touched the ground, the figures turned toward him, their eyes fixed on him with an intensity that sent a chill through his veins. "Alaric," one of them spoke, their voice low and hollow, as if it were coming from the depths of the earth. "You have awakened us, but you have also awakened what was buried." The echoes of Sielaria stir once more. Alaric's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" The figure took a step forward, their form flickering in the dim light. "The city has not been reborn, Alaric. It has been resurrected, but it is still broken. It is still haunted by what happened, by the fall of Sielaria. The shadows of the past are not gone, they are waiting to return. And you, Alaric, are the one who has given them the strength to rise." Alaric's mind raced. He had known that the past could not be forgotten, but he had not realized that it could return so violently, so powerfully. The shadows were not just memories, they were something more, something that had been waiting for the right moment to rise. I don't understand," Alaric said, his voice hoarse. The figure's eyes glowed brighter now, their form solidifying, becoming more real. "You have carried the sun, but you have also carried the darkness. The cycle of Sielaria is not just about rebirth, it is about balance. Light and dark. Life and death. You cannot have one without the other. And now, the darkness you have awakened will demand its place." Alaric felt the weight of their words press down on him like a heavy stone. the cycle. He had been trying to break it, to move forward. But now he saw the truth, he could not escape it. He had brought the city back, yes, but in doing so, he had brought back everything, the good, the bad, and the shadows that had once consumed it. The figure stepped closer, their golden eyes now piercing into his soul. You must face the shadows, Alaric. You must confront them, for they will consume everything you've worked for. The light cannot shine without the dark to give it meaning. And the echoes of Sielaria will never be silenced unless you choose to face them. Alaric took a deep breath, his chest tightening. He had made his choice to restore the city, to bring back the sun. But now, he understood that he had also made the choice to bring back the darkness. The shadows of Sielaria were not something he could ignore, something he could hide from. They were a part of him now, a part of the city. He could feel the weight of the echoes pressing against him, threatening to overtake him. The past was not just a memory, it was alive, and it was waiting for him to face it. He had to confront the darkness, or he would be consumed by it. Alaric turned and began to walk toward the center of the square, where the fountain once stood. The golden figures followed him, their eyes still glowing, their silent steps echoing in the stillness of the night. He knew that he could not run from this. The shadows would not fade. They would not disappear. He had to face them. As he reached the fountain, he stopped. The shadows around him grew darker, more solid, as though they were closing in on him. Alaric's heart raced as the memories of Sielaria, the pain, the loss, the destruction flooded through him. He felt them all. The lives that had been lost. The rulers who had fallen. The city that had burned. But there, in the midst of it all, he felt something else, something he had not felt before. Hope. The hope that had been buried beneath the shadows, the hope that had given life to Sielaria. It was there, waiting to rise again, waiting to shine through the darkness. Alaric reached out, his hand trembling, and placed it against the stone of the fountain. The shadows wavered, but they did not retreat. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had chosen to remember, but now, he would choose to face what had been buried. And with that choice, the shadows began to shift. Chapter 15, The Light Beyond the Shadow. The city was still, bathed in the soft glow of the sun, but the air around Alaric felt heavy. The weight of his decision to restore Sielaria, the light and the darkness, was beginning to take its toll. The golden figures, those who had once been trapped in time, were now shadows of their former selves, wandering the city in silence, their golden eyes no longer filled with the hope of rebirth, but with the weight of their memories. Alaric had thought that by restoring the city, he could bring it back to its former glory. But now he realized the truth: Sielaria was not just about light. It was about balance. And the shadows, the darkness that had been buried for so long, were always meant to be a part of it. He had brought them back when he brought back the sun. He had no choice but to face it. The city was alive, yes. But it was fragile, teetering on the edge between light and darkness. And now, Alaric had to find a way to lead it into a new dawn, a dawn that would not be consumed by the shadows of the past. He walked through the streets, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. The people, the ones who had been reborn, watched him with eyes full of uncertainty. They were waiting for him to lead them, to show them the way forward. But Alaric wasn't sure he had the answers. As he made his way to the square, he saw the fountain again, the place where it all began. The once cracked stone had been repaired, but the space felt empty, as if it were missing something. The golden figures had gathered there, standing in a circle, their eyes fixed on the center. Alaric approached, and they turned toward him, their eyes filled with a quiet desperation. They were waiting for him to give them the answer they sought, the answer to how to move forward. Alaric, the woman from before, spoke, her voice filled with the weight of years. The city is alive again, but we are not whole. The shadows are here, within us. They are a part of what we have lost, and we cannot move forward until we face them. Alaric nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come. The shadows of the past were not something that could be ignored. They had been a part of Sielaria's downfall, and they would always be a part of its rebirth. The question was not whether the shadows would return, they already had. The question was whether he could lead the city through them. Then we face them together, Alaric said, his voice steady. The figures nodded, their expressions solemn. They had not been able to move beyond the past, but they would help him now. Together, they would face the darkness and find a way to build a future that was not chained to what had been lost. Alaric turned toward the center of the square, where the fountain stood. He placed his hand on the stone, feeling the energy of the city flowing through him. The memories of Sielaria were alive within him, he could feel them, echoing in his mind. The fall of the city, the destruction, the pain, the loss, it was all there, woven into the fabric of the city. And it was all a part of him now. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had to let go of the past. He had to let it go so that the city could truly live again. The shadows could not rule Sielaria, not if he had the strength to face them. With a deep exhale, Alaric let the memories wash over him. He felt them surge through him, every sorrow, every joy, every moment of Sielaria's past. He felt the weight of its history, but he also felt the strength that came with it. The city had fallen, yes, but it had also risen. And now, it was time to rise again. As the light from the sun grew brighter, Alaric opened his eyes. The figures around him stood taller now, their eyes no longer filled with despair. They were filled with hope. And so was he. "We will move forward," Alaric said, his voice firm. "We will face the shadows, but we will not be ruled by them. Sielaria will live again, not as a reflection of the past, but as something new. Something stronger. And we will build it together." The golden figures nodded, their eyes glowing with renewed strength. They were no longer bound by the past. They were ready to move forward, to embrace the future. And so, with Alaric at their helm, the people of Sielaria began to rebuild. The shadows of the past still lingered, but they no longer held sway. The city had been reborn, not just in light, but in strength. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows over the streets, Alaric felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead would not be easy, but he was ready. Sielaria would rise again. And this time, it would rise not as a city bound by its past, but as a city reborn, a city built on hope, and the strength to face the shadows. Chapter 16, The Dawn of a New Era. Sielaria was awakening in ways that no one had dared to dream. The city, once fractured by time and tragedy, was now alive with movement. The streets, though still weathered by age, were filled with people, citizens, and those once lost to time, now reborn into a world they did not fully understand, but one they were ready to build with their own hands. Alaric stood at the city's center, at the heart of the square, where the great fountain had once been the city's pride. The fountain was no longer a symbol of mere remembrance, it had become a beacon of hope, its waters flowing again, symbolizing the return of life to Sielaria. But, like everything else in the city, it was fragile, still tethered to the past and not yet fully free from its shadows. The people of Sielaria, though living again, walked with uncertainty. Their eyes, glowing with the memories of their former lives, were filled with questions, and the weight of their past was evident in their every step. They were not sure how to move forward. The memories, now alive in each of them, were both a gift and a curse. But Alaric was determined. He had made his choice. He would lead Sielaria into a new dawn. The sun that had returned to the city would no longer just be a light of hope. It would be a light of action. A light that would guide them toward a future unbound by the chains of the past. He could hear the murmurs of the people as they gathered in the square. They were waiting for him to speak, to lead them. His heart pounded with the weight of the task before him. It was no longer just about restoring the city. It was about shaping its future. The balance between light and dark, between memory and hope, would be the foundation of everything they built together. The keeper's words echoed in his mind, "The past will always be with you, Alaric. But you must learn to live with it, to move beyond it." And so, Alaric stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the people of Sielaria. "People of Sielaria," he began, his voice carrying across the square. "You have been given a second chance. A chance to rebuild. To shape your future. But you must understand this is not the same city that you once knew. This is a new city, born of light, yes, but also born of shadows. The darkness that once consumed us is still here, and we must learn to live with it, not as our enemy, but as part of us." The crowd was silent, listening intently. Alaric could feel their gaze upon him, their hope mingled with fear. They were still unsure of what it meant to move forward. "We cannot erase the past," Alaric continued, his voice growing stronger. "But we can learn from it. We can take the lessons of Sielaria's history and build something new, something stronger. We will not be ruled by the shadows of what has been. We will face them together, and we will build a city that is not defined by what was lost, but by what we can create. He paused, allowing the words to sink in. The air around him seemed to shift, as though the city itself was listening, waiting for the next step. We have the strength to rebuild, Alaric said, his voice resolute. We have the strength to face the darkness. And we have the strength to build a future that is our own. Together, we will create a new Sielaria. A Sielaria that is not bound by the past, but shaped by our hands and our hearts. The crowd stirred, murmurs of agreement rising from the people. Alaric could see the hope in their eyes. They were ready. They were ready to build. Ready to move forward. But even as the city came alive with the promise of a new beginning, Alaric could feel the shadows lingering at the edges of his mind. The echoes of Sielaria's past were not so easily silenced. The darkness was still there, beneath the surface, waiting to rise again. He turned toward the steps of the castle, his gaze fixed on the looming structure in the distance. The city had been reborn, but it was not yet whole. The castle, once a symbol of power, was now a reminder of what had been lost. Its walls had been restored, but its halls were empty. The people were not yet ready to take their place within it. But Alaric knew that it was time. The people of Sielaria needed a symbol, a place where they could come together, a place where they could rebuild their future. And that place was the castle. He walked toward the castle, the people of Sielaria following him, their steps hesitant at first, but growing more confident with each passing moment. They were ready. They were ready to face the future. As Alaric reached the gates of the castle, he turned to face the people. "This is where we will rebuild," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "This is where we will face the shadows of the past, and this is where we will build our future. Together." And with that, the gates of the castle opened, and Alaric stepped inside, the people of Sielaria following him. The city was not just a place anymore. It was a vision, a dream. And it was theirs to shape. The castle stood tall before them, its gates now open wide. It was more than a building, it was a symbol of their collective strength. The sun, high in the sky, shone brighter than ever before, casting its light across the city. And for the first time since the restoration, Alaric felt the weight of the past ease from his shoulders. The future was uncertain, yes. But it was also full of possibilities. The echoes of Sielaria's past were still with them, but they no longer defined the city. The people were ready to move beyond them, to face whatever came next. The darkness, though ever present, would no longer control them. Sielaria was reborn. And with it, a new dawn was rising. Chapter 17, The Legacy of Light and Shadow. The air around Alaric was thick with anticipation as he stood at the gates of the castle, watching the people of Sielaria gather in the courtyard. The city was alive again, alive with hope, alive with the promise of a new future. The golden figures, the ones who had once been trapped in time, now walked freely among the people. They were not just citizens, they were symbols of what had been lost, and what had been reclaimed. But even in this new dawn, Alaric could feel the weight of the shadows pressing in on him. The past was not something that could be erased. It lingered like a fog, always present, always there, waiting to rise again. The darkness that had consumed Sielaria before had not been defeated, it had merely been quieted. And Alaric knew, deep down, that he could not ignore it forever. He had chosen to restore Sielaria, to bring back the light. But the light could not shine without the dark. The two were bound together, inseparable. And now, Alaric had to learn how to live with both the light of hope, and the shadow of the past. The courtyard was bustling with activity. The people were rebuilding, working together to restore the castle and the city, but there was a sense of unease in the air. The past still loomed over them, and many of the golden figures, those who had once ruled this land, were haunted by memories they could not forget. Alaric walked through the courtyard, his footsteps slow and deliberate. He could see the uncertainty in their eyes. The people were unsure of where they belonged in this new world. They had been reborn, but they had not yet found their place. As he approached the steps leading up to the throne room, Alaric paused, taking in the sight of the castle. It was a symbol of everything they had lost, and everything they had gained. The walls were still cracked in places, the stone worn by time, but it stood strong. It was a reminder of the city's past, and of the future they were building together. But it was also a reminder of the burden he carried. The weight of the sun, the light he had brought back to the city, was still heavy on his shoulders. He had chosen to remember Sielaria, to bring back its light. But the cost was greater than he had imagined. The shadows were still there, lingering at the edges of the city, creeping into the corners of his mind. Alaric knew that the past would never fully let go. He had brought the light back, but the darkness was still a part of him, a part of the city. He reached the throne room doors, his hand resting on the cold stone. The castle was silent now, as if waiting for him to step inside, to take his place as the leader of a new era. But he knew the truth: this was not just about leading the people. It was about facing the darkness within himself. He pushed open the doors, stepping into the throne room. The room was vast, its high ceilings towering above him. The golden light from the sun outside filtered through the windows, casting long shadows on the stone floor. The room was empty, save for the throne at the far end, its ornate carvings a reminder of the power that had once been held within these walls. But there was no one here. No advisors. No rulers. Just the empty space, and the echoes of what had once been. Alaric walked slowly toward the throne, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He could feel the weight of the city's history pressing down on him, the weight of the people's expectations, and the weight of his own memories. He had restored the sun, yes, but the shadows were still there. They were a part of the city, and a part of him. He reached the throne and stood before it, his hand resting on the cold stone. The room seemed to pulse with energy, the echoes of the past filling the air. Alaric closed his eyes, and for a moment, he could hear the voices of those who had ruled here before him, The rulers of Sielaria, long lost to time, their memories still lingering in the walls, in the stone, in the very air. Alaric. The voice was soft, but it rang in his ears like a bell. He opened his eyes, and there, standing before him, was the figure of the woman, the one who had spoken to him in the garden. The keeper. Her golden eyes were filled with sorrow, but also with understanding. She stepped forward, her presence filling the room, and for a moment, Alaric felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. "You have done well, Alaric," the keeper said, her voice echoing in the silence. "You have brought the light back to Sielaria. But now, you must face what is to come. The shadows are not gone. They will never be fully gone. And neither will the memories. They are a part of you, a part of the city. And you must learn to live with them." Alaric nodded slowly. He had known this, deep down. The shadows would never fully disappear. They were a part of Sielaria, a part of its soul. And they were a part of him, too. "I know," Alaric said softly. "But I can't let them rule us. I can't let the past consume us." The keeper smiled gently. "You are right, Alaric. The past cannot rule you. But it will always be a part of you. And it is through accepting that, through embracing the light and the shadow, that you will truly lead the city into the future." Alaric took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle within him. The city of Sielaria was not just a city of light. It was a city of both light and shadow, of both memory and hope. And it was his responsibility to guide it through both. The keeper placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch light but firm. "You are ready, Alaric. You have faced the darkness within yourself, and you have chosen the light. But remember this, the light cannot shine without the dark. And it is only by embracing both that you will lead Sielaria into a new era." Alaric nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. The shadows would never be fully gone. But they would no longer control him, nor the city. Together, they would build a future, one that honored both the light and the dark. With a final look at the throne, Alaric turned and walked toward the door, the keeper's presence fading as he did. The city of Sielaria was waiting for him, and he was ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 17, The Legacy of Light and Shadow. The sun had risen high above the city, casting long shadows over the cobbled streets of Sielaria. The people walked through the square, their faces a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The city had been reborn, yes, but it had also been forever changed. The light of the sun, though bright, had a faint shadow that seemed to follow it, a shadow that could not be erased. It was a reminder that the past, with all its glory and its pain, could not be ignored. It was a part of the city now, as much a part of it as the people who had rebuilt it. Alaric stood at the edge of the square, watching the people go about their day. They had made progress, yes. The streets were cleared of debris, the buildings repaired, and the golden figures those once trapped in time had taken their place once more among the citizens. But there was something in the air. Something that lingered just beneath the surface. The shadows of the past, though quiet, were always present. Alaric's footsteps echoed through the square as he made his way toward the castle. His heart felt heavy as he walked, each step taking him closer to the responsibility he had accepted. The light he had brought back to the city was not enough. It could not shine without the darkness. And the darkness, though subdued, was still there waiting, watching. He reached the gates of the castle and paused, his hand resting on the cold stone. The castle, though restored, still held the weight of its history. The walls, though strong, carried the echoes of those who had once ruled here, rulers who had failed, who had fallen. The city had been rebuilt, but it was not yet whole. The people, the memories, the shadows, they were all part of it. And Alaric knew that to move forward, they would all have to find a way to live with both the light and the dark. The gates creaked open as Alaric stepped forward, the sound of his footsteps the only sound that filled the empty courtyard. The castle had been quiet since its restoration. The once bustling halls now stood silent, as though the past still lingered in the air, waiting to be acknowledged. Alaric made his way up the stone steps to the throne room, the weight of the sun pressing on his shoulders. He had chosen to remember, to restore Sielaria to its former glory. But now, he was beginning to understand the true cost of that decision. The sun, though bright, could not exist without the shadows. And those shadows, no matter how much they had been buried, would always return. As he entered the throne room, he paused. The room was vast, its high ceilings looming above him. The throne, once a symbol of power, now stood empty, waiting for someone to take its place. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the city outside. It was as though the castle itself was waiting for him to make his next move. The people were ready for him to lead them. But how could he lead them when he was still unsure of the path himself? Alaric walked slowly toward the throne, his hand brushing the cold stone as he passed. The shadows seemed to stretch longer in the dim light, their presence growing stronger. He had restored the city, but the past was not so easily erased. The shadows were a part of Sielaria, just as much as the light. And he knew that to move forward, he would have to find a way to live with both. As he reached the throne, he placed his hand on the back of it, his fingers tracing the carvings in the stone. The throne was a symbol of power, but it was also a reminder of the failure of those who had sat upon it before him. The rulers who had once guided Sielaria had been consumed by their own darkness, their own regrets. And now, Alaric was faced with the same choice. He could not ignore the past. He could not forget the shadows that had been cast over the city. But he could choose how to move forward. He could choose to lead the people of Sielaria into a future that embraced both the light and the dark. He could choose to break the cycle, to create a new legacy, a legacy that would not be defined by the mistakes of the past, but by the hope of the future. Alaric turned toward the doors of the throne room, his gaze sweeping over the empty halls. He could feel the weight of the people's expectations pressing down on him. They were waiting for him to lead them, to show them the way forward. But the path was not clear. The shadows still lingered, and the people were still unsure of their place in this new world. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The past would never be fully erased. The shadows would always be there, lurking in the corners of his mind, in the corners of the city. But that did not mean they had to rule Sielaria. He had the power to lead, to guide the people into a new era, a new dawn. But he could not do it alone. He needed the people of Sielaria to embrace the light and the dark, to accept the legacy of both. Alaric took a deep breath and turned back toward the throne. The city was waiting for him. The shadows were waiting for him. But so was the light. He stepped forward and took his seat upon the throne. And in that moment, the weight of Sielaria's legacy settled upon his shoulders. Chapter 18, The Final Light. The wind had shifted, carrying with it a sense of urgency that Alaric couldn't shake. Sielaria was alive again, but its heartbeat was still unsteady, like a newborn struggling to draw its first breath. The sun, though bright, was still a beacon of hope in a city haunted by the shadows of its past. The people of Sielaria, though reborn and eager to move forward, still carried with them the weight of memories they could not escape. Alaric stood at the edge of the castle's balcony, gazing out over the city. The golden light of the sun bathed everything in its warmth, but the shadows still clung to the edges, stretching long into the horizon. The city had been reborn, yes, but there was still so much to be done. The people were rebuilding, but they were also struggling with what had been lost. They were not whole yet. And neither was Alaric. The past had a way of lingering, even when you tried to leave it behind. Sielaria's history was etched into the city's very bones. Its rise, its fall, its destruction, and its rebirth, it was all a part of him now. And as much as he had tried to restore the city's light, the shadows had returned with equal strength. They were not just memories, they were part of the city's soul, and part of his own. He turned away from the balcony and walked through the corridors of the castle. The walls, though restored, still held the echoes of the past. They whispered of rulers who had fallen, of battles fought and lost, of a time when Sielaria was the shining jewel of the world. Now, it was a city of survivors, of people who had been given a second chance but didn't know what to do with it. Alaric knew that he could not move forward without first confronting what had been buried. The shadows of the past were still there, and they would not rest until they were acknowledged. He had restored the light, yes, but the darkness was still part of him and part of Sielaria. As he walked deeper into the castle, he passed through the hallways lined with tapestries, their faded threads depicting the city's history. The images seemed to come alive as he passed, flashes of memories, of triumphs and tragedies, of glory and ruin. The past was never truly gone. It was always there, just beneath the surface, waiting to be remembered. At the end of the hall, Alaric reached the great chamber, the heart of the castle, where the throne stood. The throne was empty, waiting for him to take his place, but he could not bring himself to sit upon it. The weight of the city's history, of its rebirth, was too much. He had brought back the light, but at what cost? He had chosen to remember, to restore Sielaria. But now he had to choose whether he could truly move forward, or whether the shadows would always control the city. Alaric closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of the people's expectations pressing down on him. They were waiting for him to lead them. They were waiting for him to show them the way. But he wasn't sure if he knew the way anymore. Alaric. The voice broke through his thoughts, soft but clear. He opened his eyes to see the keeper standing before him. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the chamber, and her presence filled the room like a weight. "You've come far," she said, her voice carrying the weight of time itself. "But you still haven't faced what you must." Alaric frowned, his mind racing. "What do you mean?" "I've done everything. I've brought back the sun. I've restored the city." The keeper shook her head. "The sun has returned, yes. But the shadows still remain. You cannot move forward until you face what has been buried." Alaric felt a chill run down his spine. He had known this moment would come, the moment when he would have to face the darkness that had been lurking within him. He had brought back the light, but now he had to confront the shadows. "The shadows will always be there," Alaric said, his voice steady. "But I can't let them control me. I can't let them control Sielaria." The keeper stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "You don't understand, Alaric. The shadows are not your enemy. They are part of you. Part of the city. Part of everything that was lost and everything that was found. You cannot erase them. You can only learn to live with them." Alaric's heart raced. The keeper's words felt like a weight on his chest. How could he live with something so dark? How could he embrace something that had caused so much pain? "Do you remember what you chose, Alaric?" the keeper asked softly. "Do you remember why you restored Sielaria?" He nodded slowly. "I chose to bring back the light. I chose to give the city a second chance." The keeper's eyes softened. "But you did not just bring back the light. You also brought back the darkness. The light cannot exist without the shadow, just as the shadow cannot exist without the light. The two are intertwined. The past and the future, the joy and the sorrow, they are all part of the same cycle. You cannot have one without the other." Alaric's mind swirled as the weight of her words settled over him. He had tried to separate the light from the dark, to restore the sun and erase the shadows. But now he realized that the two could not be separated. The shadows were a part of the city, a part of the people, and a part of himself. "The city will never be whole," Alaric said quietly. "Not unless we accept both." The keeper nodded, her expression knowing. "Exactly. The legacy of Sielaria is not just light. It is not just darkness. It is both. You must learn to live with both. Only then can you lead the city into a new era. Alaric closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her words sink in. The past would always be a part of him. The shadows would never be fully gone. But he could choose to face them. He could choose to live with them, to use them to shape a new future for Sielaria. He opened his eyes and stood tall. I understand now. The shadows will always be with us, but they do not have to control us. We can move forward, together. The keeper smiled, a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes. Then you are ready, Alaric. You have faced the darkness within yourself, and now you can lead the people of Sielaria into the light. Alaric turned toward the throne, his heart filled with a sense of resolve. He had chosen to face the shadows. He had chosen to embrace both the light and the dark. And now, he was ready to lead Sielaria into a new era. With that, Alaric took his place upon the throne, not as a ruler, but as a guide. The light of the sun shone brightly above him, and the shadows, though still present, no longer controlled him. Together, they would build a new future. And the city of Sielaria, once lost to time, would rise again not as a city of light or dark, but as a city of both. Chapter 19, The Eternal Balance. The light of the sun bathed Sielaria in its golden warmth, yet the shadows of the past still clung to the edges of the city like a silent, ever-present fog. The restoration of the city was not just about rebuilding buildings or restoring the fountain, it was about rebuilding trust, hope, and strength in the face of a past that would never truly be forgotten. Alaric stood at the balcony of the castle, gazing out at the sprawling city below. The streets were alive with the hum of daily life, the people working together to rebuild what had been lost. But even amidst the bustle, Alaric could feel the tension in the air. The people had been given a second chance, but they were still unsure of how to move forward. The shadows of the past were deep, and no matter how much light they restored, they could never erase what had happened. He had led them through the worst of it. He had restored the sun, given them back their memories, and helped them rise from the ashes. But now, the question remained, could Sielaria ever truly be free of the shadows? Could the city build a future without repeating the mistakes of the past? The weight of those questions pressed heavily on Alaric's heart. He had chosen to remember, to bring back the light, but in doing so, he had also brought back the darkness. The two were intertwined, inseparable, and he knew that they could never truly escape each other. But there was still hope. The city, though burdened by its past, was alive. The people were ready to rebuild, to rise above the shadows. But to do so, they needed something more than just memories. They needed guidance. They needed someone to show them that the light could shine brighter than the darkness. And Alaric knew that he was the one who had to lead them. But the road ahead was not clear. The balance between light and shadow was fragile, and one misstep could send the city tumbling back into the darkness from which it had emerged. He turned from the balcony and made his way down the corridors of the castle, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The castle was quiet now, the halls empty except for the faint whispers of the past. He had restored the city, but he still felt as though something was missing. The people had their memories, their light, but they didn't know how to move forward. They didn't know how to live with both the light and the shadow. As he entered the throne room, Alaric paused. The throne, once a symbol of power, now stood empty, waiting for someone to claim it. He had brought the light back to Sielaria, but the throne represented something more than just leadership. It was a symbol of the city's soul, a soul that was still torn between the past and the future. Alaric stepped forward and placed his hand on the cold stone of the throne. He had come a long way, but the journey was far from over. The shadows were still there, still waiting, still threatening to consume the city. And yet, Alaric knew that he could not run from them. He had to face them, not as an enemy, but as a part of the city's legacy. The door to the throne room creaked open, and Alaric turned to see the golden figure, the woman who had guided him through the early stages of Sielaria's restoration, standing in the doorway. Her eyes, though still glowing faintly, held a deep sadness. "You're still here," Alaric said, his voice soft. She nodded, her expression solemn. "I am here, Alaric, because you are not done yet. You have restored the light, but you have not yet learned to live with the darkness. The balance is fragile, and you must understand that the shadows will never leave Sielaria. They are part of its soul, just as much as the light is. You must learn to live with both." Alaric's heart sank. He had hoped that once the sun was restored, the darkness would fade. But the shadows had been too deeply woven into the fabric of the city's past. They were a part of it, and they would never be fully gone. "Then what do I do?" Alaric asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "How do I lead the people when the shadows are still there, always lurking in the corners of our minds?" The woman stepped forward, her golden eyes locking with his. "You lead by embracing both the light and the darkness. You must guide the people of Sielaria to understand that neither can exist without the other. The shadows are not your enemy, Alaric. They are a part of you, a part of the city. You cannot erase them, but you can choose how to live with them." Alaric's mind raced. He had always believed that the light was the answer. That the shadows were something to be banished, something to be forgotten. But now, he understood. The shadows were not something to fear. They were part of Sielaria's story, part of its strength. And if he could learn to live with them, to balance them with the light, then perhaps Sielaria could be truly free. He turned toward the throne, his fingers tightening around the stone. "I understand now. The light and the shadow, they must coexist. And it is my responsibility to guide the city through both." The woman nodded. "Exactly. The future of Sielaria depends on your ability to lead with both the light and the dark. You must teach the people that their past, though painful, is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to embrace, to learn from, and to build upon. Alaric turned back toward her, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. The road ahead would not be easy. But he had come this far, and he knew that he had no choice but to continue. He had brought the light back to Sielaria, but now he had to help the city learn to live with the shadows. He stepped toward the throne, his resolve hardening. I will lead them. I will guide them into a future where both light and shadow are accepted. Sielaria will rise, not just from the ashes, but from the balance of both. The woman smiled, her eyes filled with approval. You are ready, Alaric. Now, it is time for you to lead. With that, Alaric took his seat upon the throne, not as a ruler, but as a guide. The city of Sielaria, once lost to time, was now in his hands. And with it, the legacy of both light and shadow. Chapter 20, The Path Forward. The sun rose slowly over Sielaria, casting its warm golden light over the city that had once been a shadow of its former self. The streets were alive with movement, the people working together to rebuild, to create something new. The sound of hammers on stone, the laughter of children, the murmur of voices, everything was infused with the energy of a new beginning. Yet, even in this new dawn, Alaric could feel the weight of what he had carried for so long, the balance between light and shadow, the memories of the past that were woven into the fabric of the city. He stood on the balcony of the castle, his eyes sweeping over the city below. The golden figures, those who had once been trapped in time, were now living among the people, their eyes filled with the wisdom of the ages. The city had been reborn, yes, but it was still fragile. It was still healing, and so was Alaric. The past was not something that could be erased. It was a part of them, as much a part of the city as the stones and the sun. The shadows of Sielaria's history still lingered, but they were no longer a threat. They had become a part of the legacy that Alaric had helped shape, a legacy not defined by the pain of the past, but by the hope of the future. As Alaric stood there, the wind carrying with it the scent of flowers and the sounds of the city, he realized that he had come to a moment of reckoning. He had restored the light, but it was not the light alone that had given Sielaria its strength. It was the people. It was the way they had come together, the way they had embraced both the light and the shadows, and the way they had chosen to move forward, not as slaves to the past, but as architects of their future. The city had a long road ahead of it. There would be more challenges, more darkness to confront. But Alaric now understood that the balance between light and shadow was not something to fear. It was something to embrace. For without the shadows, there could be no light. And without the light, the shadows would consume everything. He turned away from the balcony, his mind made up. The throne, which had once felt like a heavy weight, now seemed like a tool, something to use, not to possess. He was not a ruler. He was a guide. And Sielaria, its people, their hearts and souls, were the true power. He walked through the castle, through the hallways that had once been filled with the echoes of rulers long gone. Now, they were filled with life. The golden figures were rebuilding, as were the citizens, side by side. They were no longer trapped in the past. They were building something new, something stronger, something that would stand for generations. Alaric's footsteps echoed through the halls as he made his way to the central chamber, where the great table stood, a place where decisions had been made, where the fate of Sielaria had once been decided. But now, it was a place for gathering, for collaboration, for shaping the future. He entered the room to find the leaders of the city waiting for him. The people, the golden figures, and the elders of the city who had helped guide the restoration process, they were all there. And as Alaric entered, they all turned to him, waiting for his words. Alaric stood before them, his heart steady. He had led them through the worst of it, and now it was time for the final step. The city had been reborn, and with it, so had its people. The path forward was theirs to choose. It would not be easy, but it was theirs. And that, he realized, was the most powerful thing of all. We have come far, Alaric began, his voice clear. We have faced the darkness, and we have brought back the light. But we cannot stop here. The shadows will always be a part of us, just as the light will always be a part of us. We must learn to live with both, to use them to build a future that is stronger than either one alone. He looked out over the group, his eyes meeting each of theirs. We must work together, as we always have. The future of Sielaria is not in the hands of one person, but in the hearts of all of us. We must choose to move forward, not as slaves to the past, but as the architects of our destiny. The room was silent for a moment, and then the voices of the people rose in agreement. The golden figures nodded, their eyes glowing with the light of the sun and the depth of their memories. They had all come to understand the same truth: the future could only be built by accepting both the light and the shadows, by learning to live with the past while looking toward the future. Alaric stepped forward, his hand resting on the table. We are the legacy of Sielaria, he said softly. And our future is ours to shape. Together. And with those words, the people of Sielaria began to plan for the future. They began to shape a city that would not be defined by its past mistakes, but by its ability to rise above them. They would build a city where both light and shadow coexisted, where the past was honored but did not rule them, and where hope was not just a distant dream, but a living, breathing force. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be struggles, conflicts, and moments of doubt. But Alaric knew that the strength of Sielaria was not in the absence of darkness, it was in its ability to rise above it, to find balance, and to build something stronger than the sum of its parts. The sun, though it had risen many times before, now shone brighter than ever. And beneath its light, the people of Sielaria began to build their future together.